Good morning, dear participants. It's an honor and a privilege for me to open the first session of the first online training program of the Institute of Sathya Sai Education of South Europe. I'd like to first of all convey a very, very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of our director, Mr. George Bebedelis, and the entire team. The Institute of Sathya Sai Education of South Europe represents 12 countries, which are Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, France, Greece, Italy, Israel, Macedonia, Romania, Serbia, Slovenia, Spain, and Switzerland. It is thanks to the members of the Institute and its collaborators that this training program has been possible. My name is Suzanne Palermo, and I live in Switzerland, and am a member of the coordinating committee of this wonderful event. And I will be your facilitator for today's session. Before I introduce today's speakers to you, I'd like to give a few informations. The first is that, and this with a touch of excitement, 170 people have registered for this training program from 24 countries. Besides the countries mentioned previously, there are people from Fiji, Ghana, India, Mexico, the Netherlands, Nigeria, Poland, Portugal, Sri Lanka, Trinidad and Tobago, and the United Kingdom. So, of course, a warm welcome again to everyone. And for this reason, it is of utmost importance to please keep our video cameras always turned off and our microphones muted, as this alone will ensure a clear and uninterrupted connection of this program for everyone. For those of you who may be new with Zoom, should you lose all of a sudden the Zoom window, please don't worry. You will find an icon on the bottom of your screen, which is blue with a little camera. And if you click on that, your window will come back. Otherwise, you can go back to the initial link and come back to us through that. So there's no need to worry. As you know, we will have time dedicated to questions and answers after the presentations. And this session will be co-facilitated by Ms. Esther Puentes, who is also a member of the coordinating committee. So please make a note of any questions you may have that you would like to put forward during that time, and you will be able to do so through the chat box or through the raise hand option. I'd also like to remind everyone that we are recording today's presentations, that we will be recording only the presentations, and you will be informed when they have been uploaded on the Institute's website, so you can go back to them whenever you wish. I'd like to now go through quickly the program, the overall program that we will be initiating today together, so we can focus on it and see what we are about to begin. As you know, we are beginning course 1 of module 1 of the training program of the Sathya Sai Education and Human Values training program. And today our two speakers who will work in a tandem will introduce the philosophy of Sathya Sai Educære to us. Every 2 Saturdays we will meet. On the 13th March, we will view the interrelation of the 5 human values and begin to enter into the depth of the values with the value of love. After that, on Saturday, 27th March, we will tackle the value of truth. On the 10th of April, the value of righteousness. On the 24th of April, the value of peace. On the 8th May, the value of nonviolence. After that, on Saturday, 22nd May, we will have a close-up focus on the significance and importance of character and see how we can cultivate it more in our lives. On the 5th of June, we will have an overview of the life and teachings of the founder of the program, Sathya Sai, and the history of ISSE-SE, and also inform you a little bit about what is going on around the world, how the program is being implemented, and since when. And on the 19th of June, we will have a sum-up session. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our speakers to you. And I will begin with Ms. Raksha Mahtani from Spain. Raksha graduated in economics and management through the London School of Economics. She continued her postgraduate studies by receiving a one-year grant and doctoral training in quantitative methods, economics and business at the Carlos III University of Madrid, while assisting with teaching statistics and econometrics to first-year university students, 2003 and 2004. Raksha has been a teacher trainer and faculty member of the Institute of Sathya Sai Education of South Europe since the year 2009, and has participated in ISSE-SE training programs conducted in Spain, as well as other European countries. She has worked in the field of education for more than 15 years, with experience at all educational levels, including formal and informal contexts. Raksha is passionate about education and human values and has dedicated most of her professional life to implement an education model that promotes human excellence, inspired by and based on the philosophy and methodology of Sathya Sai Educære. She currently works in the British Institute in International School, Green Valley School in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, where she teaches weekly human values lessons to all the primary and secondary students. She is also the Education in Human Values and Character Building Director at the school, taking care of the social, emotional well-being of every child. So thank you, Raksha, for being with us today. Our second speaker for today is Mr. George Bebedelis from Greece. George graduated from the National Technical University of Athens in 1987. He subsequently obtained a diploma in pedagogics from the School of Professional Teachers of Technical Education in 1999, and a master's in philosophy in history and philosophy of science from the National Kapodistrian University of Athens. He is presently a teacher of mechanical engineering and secondary vocational education in Athens. George has been teaching Sathya Sai Education and Human Values classes for children since 1992. He has been a teacher trainer of ISSE Institute and has participated in ISSE-SE training programs conducted in various countries in Europe since the year 2000. He is an experienced lecturer on human values and ancient Greek philosophy, and has given speeches in Australia, Thailand, India, and the United Arab Emirates. George is co-founder of the Sathya Sai Center for Human Values in Athens, and since March 2014, he is the director of the Institute of the Sathya Sai Education of South Europe. So I'd like to now invite George to begin the presentation and enlighten us with the basics of the philosophy of Sathya Sai Educære. Thank you, George, and thank you all for your attention.
Good morning, dear friends. I would like also to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you, Suzanne, for this nice introduction. We are very happy to start today this online course on Sathya Sai Education Human Values. And we're very happy to see that many people have registered for this course, not only from the countries that the Institute of Sathya Sai Education South Europe functions, but also from various countries around the world. We have even people from Fiji or Sri Lanka, India, and we are very happy. Ghana from Africa, we are very happy about that. So this is a program which is applied in all over the world, as many of you know, and this brings together all of us by making good use of this online technology in which recently we have become very familiar. We make so many meetings in our countries, but also international, and this is a good thing out of this difficult and critical situation that we all live in all over the world nowadays. But out of all bad things, something good is coming. Like now we are all together here to go through the basic principles of Sathya Sai Educære, which is an education for life. And to start today with this introduction, which will be followed by analytical presentation on the 5 values, as already Suzanne mentioned. We see Sathya Sai Educære, and the first of all, I would like to start with this logo that we use. And we see in the middle of this logo, the word Educære. It is a coined word with this A-E double letter, and then the 5 human values. There is a reason, because through this word Educære, we can convey the philosophy of Sathya Sai education, which is based on the double root of the English word education. As we can find in the dictionary, education has a double root in Latin. One is educare, and the other is educere. Educare means to foster, to nourish, to feed. And educare, or educere, you know, some people, they say, especially the Italian people, they say educere nowadays. But we have to know that the original pronunciation in Latin was not with a soft C or T. It was a hard K. So it was educare. So this is also the way that Satyasai, who is the founder of the program, has referred to this education. All the time he underlined the root of the English word education as educare, and mainly he referred to the second one, this one that is written with E, educare, which means to bring out, to educe, to manifest. By this, he wanted to emphasize that the process of education is not a process that has to bring something that which is not there, but the human values that we want to bring out are already within. Then the second word, educare, reminds us that it is not enough just to bring out. In order to make them bloom, we have to foster, to nourish, and to feed. So this is the double task of an educator. And this can be compared with the task of a farmer. because the farmer has the field, and then in the field he has to put the seed. So the seed has already the beauty in it, but his task is to nourish this seed, to make it grow, and to bring out the beauty that is hidden in this seed. That's why, since ancient times, education was compared with the art of farming, the act of cultivation. We use this word, cultivation of character, cultivation of soul, borrowing this from cultivating the earth, the field. So the educator is a farmer. Maybe here we can see a difference, because the farmer has a double task. He has to plant the seed in the earth and then to make it grow. But here with education, actually the beauty of the human values is already in the soul. The educator is not necessary to plant the seed. The seed is by nature in every soul. Every soul is by nature beautiful, but this beauty is hidden. And what is this beauty? This beauty can be summarized with the 5 human values. The 5 human values of love, truth, righteousness, peace, and nonviolence. Often we ask ourselves, what is the most important value? Is there one which is more than the others? Often Satyasai says that the 5 human values is like the 5 fingers of a hand. All 5 fingers are needed in order to make a task. So all 5 human values are necessary and complementary. But he himself also says that out of the 5 human values, love is the undercurrent. So maybe that's why also the presentation on the values will start with love. And then he explains very nicely, love in words and thoughts is truth. Love in action is righteousness. Love in feelings is peace. And love in understanding is non-violence. So this is the main purpose of this educational program, to discover deep within the soul of the young students, in the tender soul of the young students, this beauty of the human values and make it possible to blossom, thus manifesting an ideal character which will confer first peace and happiness to his own self, but by doing this, by being a wholesome character, then he will be able to confer to the welfare of society. So Satyasai, to quote from him, he says, education has 2 aspects. The first is related to external and worldly education, which is nothing but acquiring bookish knowledge. In the modern world, we find many well-versed and highly qualified in this aspect. The second aspect, known as educare, is related to human values. The word educare means to bring out that which is within. The human values of truth, righteousness, peace, love, and non-violence are hidden in every human being. One cannot acquire them from outside. They have to be elicited from within. But as man has forgotten his innate human values, he is unable to manifest them. Educare means to bring out the human values and translate them into action. Being an educator for so many years and being daily in the classes and in the school environment, I realize more and more how important are these words. How important is to shift the focus of today's education, not just to informing, not just to giving knowledge and skills, but mainly to shift the focus inside and to make it possible that this beauty which is there in the human soul will be manifested. This is the only way that we can go on. Because whatever amount of knowledge we have, whatever amount of technology skills, if we don't have this quality that is necessary in order to make good use, then it won't confer peace and happiness, but the opposite. So I would like now to invite my colleague, my dear Raksha. Already Suzanne presented her bio, and I will see who is going to continue now and to share her rich and valuable experience from implementing for many years with young students this program of education in human values. Dear Raksha.
Thank you very much, George. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. I'd like to also extend my warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today, to Suzanne as well for her very warm introduction too. It truly is an honor to be part of this online course because as George mentioned already, this program is an educational program, and as you would have seen on the slide, it said education for life. So for me, more than an educational program for children, which is absolutely, of course, is one of these tools that provides us to be better teachers, to be better people, but it truly is a self-transformational program, which is for each one of us to be the best version of ourselves, to discover who we truly are. So in this sense, as George very nicely presented already with the two roots, the two Latin roots of the word education, I think this is really important because being an educator myself, I've always asked myself, well, what is my true task, right, at school? What is the true task of an educator? And it's really beautiful to see that it's just to foster, to create the right environment so that every student feels protected, to bring out their potential within. And when we think about that word, to bring out, somehow it suggests that there's already something inside. And this has always struck me very beautifully in the sense that if educare is to bring out, that means that this knowledge is already within, this knowledge is already present in every human heart. So you can see this beautiful image of a tree right now on the screen. And one of the things that I realized, because through the art of questioning, I asked myself, if this knowledge is present in every child, what is our role as educators? I'm not going to put this knowledge into them because it's already there. So what is it that we have to do? And I realized it's just a matter of creating an environment and culture of love for them to bring this out. So if it's there, the best tool many times is the art of questioning. So every year with the children, I invite them, even the youngest ones, the 4- and 5-year-olds even, I usually use the sentence, I invite you when we're sitting in a circle. I many times say, I invite you to close your eyes so that you can begin to see. So many times they'll say, Miss Raksha, did you say close our eyes to begin to see? But we can only see with our eyes open. So I say, well, you know, I've noticed that many things I've discovered in my life, it's only when I go somehow within myself. So I asked them to visualize and imagine a big tree with all its different parts. And as they tell me the different parts of the tree, I start drawing them on the board. So they start mentioning, you know, they say the trunk, they talk about the branches, they talk about all of that. And many times they don't really mention the roots as such. And I always say, Have you thought, what if I invite you to think about the tree again, but maybe you can think about something that we don't see with our eyes, it's not so visible, but that really exists. And they say, oh, of course, the roots. So as soon as I draw these roots, first of all, it's only the drawing of the tree and everything they start saying. And it's very beautiful because when I ask them, and what would be the most important part of this tree for you? And they all coincide that the roots are extremely important because it's what holds the tree. If not, without it, the tree would fall, they say. And it also feeds the tree. It nourishes the tree with everything it needs. So this question then again takes me intuitively to ask them, in a human being, is there anything that we do not see with our eyes that can be very important? Immediately, it's so beautiful. I've been doing this for the last 14, 15 years, and students always give the same answer. So it somehow shows me that this knowledge indeed is deep within. So when I ask them, so yes, so is there something in a human being that's very important that we do not see with our eyes? They might mention the skeleton, the blood, and all of that, but mainly they refer to the heart. Oh yes, Ms. Raksha, the heart. And I say, oh, and why is the heart important? Of course, they will talk about, sometimes they talk about the function the heart has. It pumps blood all around the body. But they usually focus on, well, we can love people with our hearts. We can show love to others with our hearts. And I say, that's actually true. We actually use an expression many times to say, oh, this person has a big heart. This person has a heart of gold. So I invite them through the art of questioning again. Do you think you can tell me some words to describe somebody with a big heart? How would you describe a person with a big heart, with a heart of gold? And I invite them to do this through a popcorn activity so they can, I said, as soon as you think of a word, just stand up and pop your word out like as if we were, popcorn in a pan. So they find this very interesting and they start saying, oh, someone with a big heart is someone who's helpful, someone who's sharing, someone who's caring, someone who's kind, someone who is loving, someone who is respectful, and many more words. Someone who is a good friend. So I start writing all these words that they share with me on the board. And immediately I say, wow, look at all these wonderful words. Do you know what we call them when we group them together? Help, sharing, care, kindness, love, respect, gratitude, friendship, whatever words turn up. Do you know what we call them when we group them together? And the young ones, sometimes they don't know the answer, the little ones, but the older ones, they usually do know. And when I say, or they say, well, these are values, I think, or these are positive qualities in every human being, I say, well, absolutely, this is what we call human values. So it's very intuitive for them to then understand that what are human values? Well, human values are those qualities, those attributes, those virtues that make each one of us have a big heart. So another image that really helps us in the classroom is the image of an iceberg. So again, through the art of questioning, I just show them this image and I ask them what it is. They say it's an iceberg, but most of them realize and they will say something like, but Ms. Raksha, why have you not used the whole screen? Like there's a lot of empty part in this photograph. So as soon as they see the full picture, which you will see just now, as soon as they see that big part of the iceberg, which we will see in the next slide, thank you. The first impression always is, wow, we didn't know all of this existed. So immediately my question to them is, if you didn't know this part existed, the truth is I didn't know myself. How do you think somebody or some people discovered this part that's underneath and that's so big in size? Well, they say immediately, well, Mr. Raksha, the person or people would have had to like dive deep within. They have to go really profound. They have to really dive deep within to discover this. So this is when I invite them on a journey every year to say, well, we're going to be like this iceberg. We can dive deep within ourselves. Remember when I said to close our eyes to begin to see? Well, we might be finding lots of things within us that we didn't even know we have in there. Some beautiful treasures that when we put them into practice, these human values, we will really show who we truly are, all the potential of goodness we have within. So this is what Educare is about. It's about diving deep within ourselves, to bring out these inherent qualities, these inherent human values, just like it's present in a tree with the roots and the seed, the same way in the iceberg, in our human heart, in our spiritual heart. We have all these treasures to put into practice. So this is very nicely summarized through the next quote that we will go through right now. It's a quote from Sathya Sai, the founder of this beautiful educational program. And he says, for a tree to grow, the roots must be strong. Without the roots, the tree would collapse. Similarly, students must have a solid foundation for their progress. And what is this solid foundation? Knowledge, along with moral, ethical, and spiritual experience, are the best foundation. So in these beautiful words, we can see that indeed the founder of this program is telling us that this foundation, the roots of a human being in this sense, the roots of education is this moral, ethical, and spiritual experience. And whenever we use this word spiritual in this program, spirituality refers to knowing and discovering who we truly are. So just moving on to who we truly are, this takes us to what is true education. If education is about creating, again, going back to its roots, if it's about fostering, if it's about nourishing, if it's about protecting, and creating that environment for each one of us to bring out, to manifest, to elicit who we truly are, keeping that in mind. Well, as the founder again reminds us, true education is not related just to the world. True education is that which is related to you and helps you to realize the true meaning of I. And this is the purpose of the whole Education in Human Values program, based on Sathya Sai Educære, to truly understand, and I know George will beautifully continue now, to help us answer this question and realize who we truly are. So George, please go ahead. It would be really nice to hear you again.
Thank you, dear Raksha. Very nicely, we came to this fundamental question, because when we speak about discovering the treasure within, naturally, the question that we have to answer is, what is within and who is my real self? Who am I? This is a fundamental question which takes us back. It is not new. This is ancient. This is the most basic question that comes from inside every human being. So we will find many philosophers, many thinkers of the ancient past, but of the modern era, always in each time having spoken about this question and given some answer, which we can take and be inspired by it. One, now this question takes us back also to ancient Greece, and here we see the remainings of the most sacred place at that time, in about the 5th, 4th century BC. This was the temple of Apollo. Apollo was the god of light, god of wisdom, but at the same time also god of music. Music is very important art because it goes deep within the heart and has this capacity with beauty and this fascination that can bring in the heart to draw out from within this beauty. So that's why Apollo was connected with all this. He was considered to be the chief of the 9 muses. And there, in this temple, it is very well known that it was written as the visitor was coming, he could see this writing, know thyself. It was there, know thyself. And this is connected with Socrates, because Socrates, we all know him, and he was devoted to Apollo. Out of all the deities of the ancient Greek pantheon, Socrates was connected with Apollo. And then he knew that there in this temple, it is written, know thyself. And then he said to himself, if my God says like this, then my main task in life is to answer this question, who am I? Know thyself. This connection of Socrates with this fundamental question was made clear. We were very lucky to have some interviews with Satyasai, some close interaction with him. When visited him in India, some Greek groups in the past, at that time I was a young man, and all the time he was connecting his teaching with the teaching of Socrates. And this was wonderful because it took us back to our own roots. And by studying the teachings of the ancient philosophers, we came closer and we understood that what this Sathya Sai educational program wants to give is not something new. It is just to bring again and to make alive the ancient wisdom. This was all the time there. This knowledge is all the time present, but we have forgotten. We have to remember. So this was the task of Socrates. Socrates was working. He didn't travel much. He was mainly stayed in Athens. This here you can see a picture of with some buildings of that time. So Socrates was working there. He was teaching. We have many writings. Actually, he didn't write himself, but his disciple, as you know, Plato, who was the most eminent disciple of Socrates, he was the one who wrote everything. And we are very fortunate to be able to go through this teaching and to know what this great sage was teaching. And as Raksha said before, the main art of Socrates was to use the art of questions and answers. This is what we call midwifery or mephtic art. It is very well known today, this Socratic midwifery, which is actually similar, exactly the same with Educære, because with the help of this questioning and answering, this process, we want to bring out what is already within. Socrates was defining this art for himself by referring to the art of his mother, because his mother was a mea. Mea means midwife. That's why in English is called mephtic, this art. And there is a very beautiful dialogue written by Plato. Theetitos is the title of this work. Plato has written so wonderful pieces of art because his dialogues are really pieces of art. And there, Socrates gives some knowledge about his art. So he says, my art is similar with that of midwives, but mine differs from theirs in being practiced upon men, not women, because mainly at that time, in the places that Socrates was moving, in the gymnasium and in the places that the young boys were practicing, it was mainly men. That's why he's saying that. And intending their souls in labor, not their bodies. But the greatest thing about my art is this, that it can examine in every way whether the mind of the young man is bringing forth a false image or a real and genuine offspring. Here we can see a detail which is emphasized, but actually it's not a detail, it's a very important aspect. The art of Socrates was not just to bring out, because when we want to bring out, many things can come. We know that in a human being, in a human soul, there are many different levels. So when something is coming out, we cannot be sure from which level this comes. We cannot be sure that what comes out is all the time related to this inner core which we referred before, which is the seat of human values. There are other levels, more superficial. So many things can come from within. So the art of educator is not just to accept whatever comes out, but to discriminate, is it right or is it wrong? And this is emphasized by Socrates. You see here, he says the greatest thing about my art is not just to bring out. The greatest thing is to examine in every way whether the mind or the heart, we could say, of the young man is bringing forth a false image or a real and genuine offspring. What comes out, is it right or is it wrong? Because I say that, being an educator, I see that often educators and pedagogues and psychologists speak about Socratic midwifery, but they don't mention this important aspect. And often we say, okay, let it come out, let it be, let express whatever comes, either when we refer to students, to children, or maybe grown-ups. And we tend to forget that we have to examine what comes out and then to make an effort to keep only what is correct. This is very important. It's like a farmer. I mentioned before the act of cultivation of the land. The farmer is sowing the seed, but we very well know that one part of his nourishment is if a weed is coming along with the plant, he has to be alert. He has to have the knowledge which is the right, which is not, and then to take out what is not right and to keep the real plant. So this is an aspect of Socratic midwifery that we have to keep in mind. This aspect of examining between right and wrong. And here I would like to give a detail about this, the word that Socrates uses in Greek. It is the word krinin. Krinin is a very important word, this word, or diakrinin. The original meaning of this word is, from this word comes the well-known English word crisis. But the main meaning of the word krinin, or crisis, is to divide, to separate. What to separate? What is right? What is wrong? And if you make this krinin, this separation, then you can decide. That's why the word krinin in Greek has also the meaning of decide. And maybe you wonder how this is connected with the meaning of the word crisis, because when we say in English crisis, mainly we mean an emergency, a catastrophe, a trouble, but also with crisis we mean a critical point, a turning point, a decisive point. Often we have realized that in personal lives, a crisis is a moment, is a turning point in one's life. That's why these two meanings are connected. And I would like also to connect this with the situation of the world today. We often speak about crises in families, in societies, in education. But this crisis, on the other hand, is an opportunity to make a deep inquiry. What is right? What is wrong? What has been wrong? Why do we face these challenges today? So this is the real work that we have to do. What Socrates was referring to as crinin or diacrinin. This word in Latin, then you can see the similarity. It's taken from the Greek, discernere and discriminare. And from this Latin verb, then we have the English, discern and discriminate. It is exactly the same word that Socrates was using, crinin, and then we say in English, discriminate. So we can define the art of Socrates as the art of discrimination between right and wrong, not in a negative sense, discrimination, but discrimination as a critical faculty. That's what I say in education, the most important aspect of education is to be able to develop in children this faculty, this critical faculty, to be able to find the right, to make the right decision. And this is exactly what Satyasai underlines when he speaks about education. He says that today, man's knowledge is vast as an ocean. However, in spite of all his knowledge, man's power of discrimination is zero. What is good and what is bad? What is right? What is wrong? What should be done and what should not be done? This discerning power is zero in man today. That is why humanity has suffered a great decline. The value of humanity depends only on discriminatory power. Man may possess everything, but what is the use if he has no discrimination? So this discrimination is the art of Socrates, this screening the true from the false. This is the real meaning of Socratic midwifery, and this was Socrates' task. We'll have the opportunity to speak about this important function of discriminating between right and wrong when we will go through the value of truth, because this is very much connected with the value of truth. So often, sometimes when I think about this educational program, I said before, the love is the undercurrent. But I think along with love, truth and right knowledge and wisdom is fundamental. Because even love, if we have love, but if we don't have wisdom, how we can use this love, then maybe it won't be beneficial. So these, to my opinion, these are the pillars of Sathya Sai education, but also are the pillars of man's life. Love, along with truth and wisdom, in order to make good use of this power of love within. So now I would like to go again to Raksha to speak us a little more how she can apply in a simple way these deep fundamental truths in the school with young children. Please, Raksha.
Yes, dear George, thank you. So indeed, I think it was very important that you shared this philosophical aspect of going deep within. We saw the image of the iceberg before. We spoke about bringing out. But exactly, what is it that we bring out? Is everything valid? Because we have lots of sometimes negative emotions within us as well. And as educators, I'm sure those of you who work in the field of education, or even as parents, grandparents, friends, when we see children, when we see ourselves, many times we come across those negative emotions as well. And should we just allow everything to come out, or is it that we need to tune everything before? So this image is very nice. I found it once on the internet from an artist called Turcios, and it's a beautiful image because it shows, and it's actually in Spanish called afinando, which means tuning. So everything George was explaining to us just a few minutes before, we can also think about it as the art of tuning. For example, I play the guitar, and when an instrument is out of tune, even though the instrument is beautiful itself, a guitar, wow, it's so amazing. But if it's out of tune, really, it can give you a headache, and it can really cause disharmony more than anything else. However, when it's tuned and when you learn how to play it and use it in a proper way, it can provide a melodious sound, and it just fills your heart with joy. So this is the same with each one of us. We are beautiful instruments, but we have to be tuned. And how can we tune ourselves? In this image, we can see 3 main parts, which are very specific to this educational program as well. You know, we are tuning our head, our heart, and our hands referring to body. So when we tune our head, heart, and hands, only then can we actually bring out these human values that we have within. If we notice many times in education, ourselves as well, human beings were used to, we've got used to sometimes just using our head, thinking and acting immediately, or I would say more than acting, reacting. So sometimes we just think with our head and hands, you know, immediately action. But we forget that filter of our heart, to pass it through the filter of our conscience, our spiritual heart. In school, we call this, both in the school I work at right now, Green Valley School, but even when I worked in Madrid at another school in Liceo Sorolla, we called this our human values circuit. Sathya Sai talks a lot about tuning head, heart, hands. And for the students, I refer to it also as the human values circuit. And I'd just like to share a simple story, a simple anecdote that shows how this circuit works so beautifully. So I once, this was a science class, and like we say, human values can be integrated in any subject. We will see that a bit later. But in a human values class, you know, you can talk specifically about a human value, but even in other lessons like science, like maths, values are always present, right? As teachers, we try to use any platform, any subject to bring out this beautiful message. So it was a science class for the young ones, and I took a cube of ice and I took an orange. So what I did is I had explained to the students what a reversible reaction was and what irreversible reaction was. So I told them that when it's irreversible, you can't go back to what you had. And when it is reversible, you can go back to what you had. So the ice was melting, and I asked them, you know, what will happen to this cube of ice? They said, well, Ms. Raksha, this cube of ice will turn into water. And I said, if I wanted to turn this water back into ice, would I be able to do that? And they said, yes, you would, because you just have to put it in the freezer. So then they themselves said, well, then this is a reversible reaction. You can go back to what you had. When I peeled the orange, I said, oops, what if I want to put back the orange peel? I want to put the skin back on the fruit. And they were like, oh no, Ms. Raksha, you won't be able to do that. And I even took some sellotape and I kind of acted like, what about it with sellotape? And they were like, it will not look the same. What you've just done now is irreversible. So I said, oh, and I just thought, how can I connect this to human value? So I said, what about actions? When we do something, actions, are they reversible or irreversible? And they said, well, when you do something, you can't really take the action back. I mean, you can say sorry if it's something wrong, but what you've done is done. So you can't really take the action back. It's irreversible. And I said, what about our words? When we say something, they said, Ms. Raksha, words are also, you know, once you say something, you can't just swallow it back. So words too, once you say it, it's irreversible. And then I said, and what about thoughts? Because, you know, when we talk about head, everything starts with our thoughts. And I said, what about our thoughts? And immediately a 5-year-old child, Alice, and she stood up and she said, Ms. Raksha, I know that thoughts are completely reversible. They can be changed. She was so convinced about it. So I asked her how she knew. And she was very honest. She shared that morning another sweet student, Carla, had brought in some beautiful colors. They were glittery. She got them from her grandmother in Sweden. And she was really excited showing all of us these colors. And at one point, she put them back in her bag. And Alice said, I won't deny it, Ms. Raksha, this morning I had a thought. And my thought was, when Ms. Raksha's not looking, when no one's looking, I might just go into Carla's bag, take her colors and put them in my bag. As soon as she said that, of course, Carla reacted. We all were like, whoa. And she was like, wait, but I haven't really finished my story. She said, that's what I thought with my head. She said, but then I remembered the famous human values circuit. She said, I thought that with my head. And before just doing it with my hand, I asked my heart, Alice, will this truly make you happy? Will this make the other person happy? And she said, I realized that maybe I would get some temporary happiness with it. I would be happiness for a few moments, but I knew I would not make Carla happy. And then she said, I even asked myself the other question you invite us to ask, Ms. Raksha, which was, is this really correct for me? Is this correct for the other person? This art of tuning, of discriminating, as George was saying. So she said, well, it's not correct for me because I would be taking someone's property without their permission. And it's not correct for her either. So because there was a short circuit in our human value circuit, I did not do it with my hands, she said. And Carla stood up and gave her a big hug. So they fully understood. And I thought it was so beautiful how Alice could change a small decision. When George was talking about to decide, her decision was based on this human value circuit. And even the next day, some children were playing in the playground and, just one of them had a really angry face and he was going to say something. And before he could speak up or say something, another student saw him and she just said, Richie, remember everything you're going to say is irreversible. So head, heart, hand. Think about it properly. Try to change your thought because what you're going to say is irreversible and you look really angry. And she said it with so much love that he kind of calmed down and he reverted what he was going to say. So it's very important for each one of us to tune our thoughts before engaging in any action. And this is the art of tuning, as we said. And on the next slide, we can also see this beautiful image, which is an orchestra. You can see, when we have the director of this orchestra, he's trying to coordinate all these different instruments so that they are in tune again, and they sound as one. And this is what we have to do. This is the art of tuning ourselves. We have to tune our thoughts, our words, our deeds, and everything to pass it through the filter of our conscience, our spiritual heart before anything, so that everything is, tuned, as we say. And Sathya Sai many times refers to this as well, and he talks about modern education, which many times turns man into a computer because it's all about information, loads of information being stored in our minds. And he says that in one sense we have this, but on the other hand, we also have educare, which the purpose of educare is to transform every human being into a composer. So when we think about a composer, we think about this creativity, we think about intuition, and this is what the art of education is about. It's also about connecting with our own intuition, our own inner knowledge and wisdom to bring out the most harmonious version of ourselves. So moving on as well, another very key image for all of this, talking about human values, is, the sun. When we ask the children, who does the sun shine for? Their answer is always, the sun shines for everyone, Ms. Raksha. And if I say, will it not choose to shine a little bit more on you and maybe a little bit less on me? No, the sun does not do that, they say, Ms. Raksha. The sun shines equally for everyone, and not only just for people, it actually shines for plants, for animals, for everything. And when we relate this back again to human values, who should we share our values with? And it's very intuitive for them to say, well, we must share our values with everyone as well. And when I ask them, do we always see the sunshine? They know that sometimes we do not see the sunshine because sometimes, we are filled with clouds. So the clouds don't allow us to see the sunshine, but it's still there. This is the same with our human values. They're always available. They're always latent, and they're hidden as treasures within us. We just have to make sure that we don't have these passing clouds, these negative emotions. And this is the art, again, of discrimination, of tuning ourselves to bring out and for us to be able to see this shining aspect within every individual too. So this takes us to the slide which we talk about the objectives of this program. But before that, let's just talk, we're going to see one quote from Aristotle in this case. George mentioned Plato, he mentioned Socrates as well, and he also said that this knowledge has been present. The people who talk about it change, but the knowledge itself is one and the same. And in his book, Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle said, man is by nature endowed with a spiritual sight, which makes him judge correctly and choose what is truly good. This greatest and noblest quality is not something that we can get or learn from another, but we have it as a natural quality. This good and noble gift of nature endows man with inborn, perfect, and true excellence. So again, he reminds us that this quality is within each and every one of us. It's not something that we can acquire from outside. So having said all of this, we're going to come to an end of the first part of today's presentation of this topic about the philosophy of Sathya Sai Educære. Let's look at the main objectives of Sathya Sai education. So as we can see in the points that will come up, the first thing is, of course, to awaken our human consciousness. Again, this knowledge is latent, it's there, it's present, it's available within each and every one of us. We just have to awaken it and bring it out. And in this sense, it covers a holistic knowledge of human personality, covering all levels, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So this education, this program, it gives importance as well to all aspects of human personality. And that's why many times we refer to Sathya Sai Educære as an integral program of education. Another objective is to understand that universal love is the undercurrent of all values. So again, George shared a beautiful quotation at the beginning of love. And when we talk about universal, the word universal means common to everyone. So this love that's common to everyone is the undercurrent of all values. And we will dive deep into the value of love in our next session. And its objective is to build a wholesome character, a holistic character, once again, which manifests as unity of thoughts, words, and deeds. And I would actually add here unity and purity of thoughts, words, and deeds. Because like we saw with Alice, sometimes our thoughts may not be that pure, they might not be that noble, and we need to, again, tune it again so that we can not just have unity of thoughts, words, and deeds, but purity, that it comes from the noblest and this place of wisdom and goodness within each one of us. And in that sense, we achieve integrity. And this is what everything will take us to realizing who we truly are. That answer to the question, who am I? The realization of our higher self, something that just goes beyond our body and mind. So after going through all of this, we think it would be good at this moment to have a 10-minute break. And after the 10-minute break, George and I will just finish off the presentation for today, and we will have a part to share a bit more. So it's 11:05 here, Central European time. We will enjoy some nice soft music, and it gives us time for a little break. And we will come back and continue here at 11:15 in 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your empathetic listening. Thank you.
So we're back. I hope you had some rest, some you relaxed a little. And we are going now to continue for a while and to conclude this introduction and philosophy of the Sathya Sai Education Human Values Program. For this first session, we thought that we'll make this introduction a little bigger. In the next presentations, we are going to have a workshop after the break, so everybody can be involved and participate more actively. For this first session, it is an introduction, it is a chance to know each other. So after the presentation, we'll have some time for questions and answers, and then we can, the participants, any participant who wish can introduce, can say a few words so we can know each other. Many of us have met physically sometimes, but it's good to hear some and to know who is present in this meeting. As I said, of course, it is an opportunity and we can make a good use of this technology, but at the same time, we lose this proximity and this nice feeling when we are all together and we can speak, we can see each other in a physical environment. Anyhow, everything is for the good. So now we continue, and I would like to come again back to ancient Greek philosophy. We mentioned Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle already, and but I would like to come back to Plato, who is has written a very, very important book, which is The Republic, where he explains what is the fundamental principles of an ideal society, how we can build an ideal society. You know this concern, how our societies should be ideal and how they can confer to the welfare of everybody is a concern since ancient times. And Plato has written this book, and in this book, it is very important to see that he gives a lot of importance in education. A big part of this book, which has to do with the ideal society, is dedicated for the description of an ideal educational system, because this is what will create the ideal society. The students of today are the leaders, are the citizens of tomorrow. We all know that. So in this part of the book, if one has time and can go in detail, he will be really surprised to see that the main principles that are underlined by Plato are exactly the same with those that Satyasai has underlined nowadays. Not only Satyasai or Plato, but all the great educators and the enlightened philosophers, as I said in the beginning, because this is an eternal, universal wisdom. But it is something very important that it is written, and I would like to quote. Maybe in another presentation, we'll have the chance to say a little more about the teachings of Plato. Plato was the most dedicated disciple of Socrates. So what we read from Plato is connecting us with Socrates. But of course, Plato, as he was growing on and he was himself was studying more and more within, he developed also his own thinking. So when we read this text, is a mixture between Socrates and Plato. So he speaks about education and says something important, as we can see here. Education is not putting knowledge into a soul which doesn't have it. just as giving sight into eyes that are blind. The capacity of knowledge is present in everyone's soul. And just as an eye turns from darkness to light, the soul has to turn away from the world of becoming towards truth. Education should be the art of orientation. Educators should devise the simplest and most effective methods to turn the soul towards the light of goodness. This is very profound statement. This is a very profound passage. And in the beginning, we see the same what we underlined, Raksha also before, myself, and Swami first, Sathya Sai first of all. He has said that education is not putting knowledge into a soul which doesn't have it, just as giving sight into eyes that are blind. So this capacity of knowledge, as we said before, like with the seed, is present already within the soul. But here Plato speaks about a knowledge which is something more than the knowledge that we understand. Because he speaks about the turning away from the world of becoming towards truth. So there is another dimension, because this is the basic of his philosophy, this metaphysical dimension which is beyond the reality that we experience with the senses. There is something more. So it is very important. That's why before I spoke about the value of truth, which is very important to go along with love. Because love and truth have to connect us with this dimension which is beyond the normal understanding. This is something that we have to deeply inquire. What is true in life? Even from the world that we face. Is this that we get with the senses, this truth that we get with the senses, the only truth, or is something behind, hidden somehow, behind this multiplicity that we see? This is very fundamental for Plato, and he takes a lot of time to explain that there is something more. About this, I will have the chance to speak a little more when we'll have the presentation on truth. So the art of education is not just to give you the means, even for the welfare in this world, but the art of education also to awaken the human soul to the existence of a metaphysical truth which is beyond, which is eternal. Because this world is changing all the time. Is there something changeless? Is there something which remains all the time the same, which is all the time peaceful, without any going up and down, all these changes that we face? This is the main problem of philosophy. And there, Plato connects this with the main task of educators. He says, educators should devise the simplest and most effective methods to turn the soul towards the light of goodness, because this reality, which he calls truth, he also calls goodness, or just good. But this which is a reality which is beyond the normal understanding of the word goodness. Anyhow, so in this sense, we have to turn our side from outside inside, and this we can call transformation. Transformation having to do with the way that we see things in life. So Satyasai gives this very wonderful and simple quotation: education should not be information. Education should be transformation. And in order to do this work of transformation, not only with us, because now we speak about education, we have to work and to be able to do this with children. But the fundamental principle is that first we are able to transform ourselves. So the teacher is the sculptor that reveals the inner beauty. But in this nice image, you can see that the sculptor makes his own statue. So it is very important that we work first with ourselves. This is a fundamental principle of Sathya Sai education, that the teacher should be the example. And often it is not necessary to say many words, but you teach with your example. Parents the same. The children learn from their parents not only from their words, but what they watch daily in their house. So we have to be very aware about this, and the teachers should make every effort to be ideal model, because this is what the students see. This they learn not from the words, but from the actions. That's why a maxim of the bedrock of teaching is first be, next do, after tell. We have first to be the examples. There was a very modern humanist and great teacher, which is Albert Schweitzer, and he has said something very, very nice. Example is not just another method. Example is the only method. So, like this, in Sathya Sai education, we emphasize this aspect that the teacher should be an ideal model. And in order to do this, he has to work with himself. He has to go deep within to make all this, what we said before, this self-inquiry, to discover these different levels and to achieve this inner unity and tuning between head, heart, and hands. And when he can achieve this tuning, this unity, and become one wholesome, integral being, then he can go on and work with children and can inspire and can really benefit education and society at large. Now again, I would like to give to call Raksha to continue and conclude this first presentation.
Thank you very much, George. So I think what we're going to do is more of a summary right now to somehow come to an end of today's presentation. So as we can see, we've spoken a lot about Sathya Sai Educære. And as we can see on the next slide, the main purpose of Sathya Sai education is what we have covered throughout today. And this program, this Sathya Sai Education in Human Values program, it does have an open structure in the sense that its aim is to support and to complement already existing pedagogical systems. So in a school that has their methodology that teaches, it's not a matter of changing everything or getting rid of something and adding something else. It's just a matter, again, of complementing and somehow providing this fundamental basis, these roots to the education, so that we have this aspect of educare as well present. And in that sense, George has spoken a lot about the importance of example, the importance of the teacher. And we also mentioned before that this is a self-transformational program. There's a beautiful quote that says, you know, we explain what we know, but we teach who we are. Again, we explain what we know, but we teach who we are. So in this sense, the commitment with ourselves to transform, to apply, to put into practice these values in our own lives is the first prerequisite, we would say. And this is why once we understand the objectives of this program, the objective of awakening our consciousness, the objective of tuning our head, heart, and hands, the objective of being integral human beings and practicing these human values, there's a lot of room for each one of our creativity, every teacher's intuition to connect with that inner wisdom that we all have, because that way we not only contribute to our children who we work with, but also to our own lives, which is again the ultimate purpose, to discover who we truly are and to transform ourselves to be the best versions of ourselves too. And we will go through this a bit more when we advance in this online training as well. But just to give you an idea, we can put this program into practice in an educational context in two ways, mainly the direct and indirect method. So as we can see, the first one, when we talk about the direct method, what we're talking about is weekly lesson plans and classes which have their unique focus on human values. So for example, in the school I work at, I'm very fortunate because as Suzanne presented at the start, I'm the human values teacher for each of the students, secondary and primary. So we have a moment, a space in our curriculum, in our schedule every day where the students receive through this direct method an education in human values class, which includes storytelling, it includes inspiring quotes, singing, and group activities to introspect on a particular human value or a practical aspect of one of the human values. What I just mentioned are the 5 teaching techniques, which we will also go through as we advance in this online training. But we also have the indirect method, which is not having a specific class on human values, but it's actually integrating human values in everything that we teach. I had provided before a simple and sweet example through a science class, just through reversible and irreversible reactions and how children can become aware of their thoughts, their words, their deeds. So we can actually integrate human values in every subject. And this is the ideal scenario in a school, in an educational context, to apply both the direct method, as we can see in the next point. The ideal scenario is to have both the direct and indirect method and to coordinate them in a loving manner. So just coming to an end of today's presentation too, we can see that I really like this quote that we're going to see, because first of all, I love, many of the songs of the Beatles I'm very fond of, and I really like John Lennon's songs too. And once when I came across this quote, it really helped me understand, because we're talking about human values. We're talking about discovering who we truly are. Maybe the first fundamental question is, why are we talking about all of this? Why are each one of us present here today? What is our true motivation? If we truly inquire, I think we can all reflect that every human being seeks for happiness. We can define it in different ways, and this is something that we will again dive deep within through as we advance on this course. But we all seek to be happy. This is the ultimate purpose. But what is true happiness? And this is something that, when John Lennon, when he says this in this quote, when I was 5 years old, my mother always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. So how do we achieve, how do we feel and experience this true happiness? Many times I tell the students I have the pleasure to work with that once we learn how to act from what our heart tells us to do, from our spiritual heart, from that inner knowledge within, there is no happiness that can compare. And before we were talking about this tuning, and when we come across these negative emotions in us, like anger, like lust, like greed, like jealousy, if we truly ask ourselves, and if I asked each one of you, do we feel comfortable with these emotions? Do we truly feel comfortable when we are angry? Is there something in us that feels in harmony? And I feel the answer, of course, is no, we don't feel in tune. We do not feel comfortable with ourselves. However, when we apply love, when we practice generosity, solidarity, when we are patient, there is something deep within us that stays calm, feels serenity. And this source of happiness is much different to any other source that can be temporary and come and go, you know, like George was saying before, the ups and downs of life. So this whole process of education is the art of tuning and seeing what is my true nature. Am I expressing this in every moment, through every thought, through every word, through every deed? And just coming to an end with another beautiful quote as well from Sathya Sai. We can see this beautiful ripple effect in this image. You know, a drop of water can expand and create lots of, you know, it doesn't stop there. It's something that's expansive and it spreads. So why are we talking again about human values? What can we contribute, as George was also saying, to ourselves, to our families, to our society? The truth is, you know, there are things that last forever. George was also mentioning before about this, is there something that is changeless? Is there something that's eternal? Our thoughts, our mind changes, our physical appearance, our bodies change. Is there something within every human being that is something that will last forever? And if we think about all these sources of inspiration in our own lives, be it our own family members or people we have very close by, or people who, like, you know, in history have marked a difference, we still talk about them. We still talk about what they did, how they impacted people's lives. And in this sense, ideals and values are eternal. Like Sathya Sai says, all objects in the world are liable to change. All living beings must pass some days. But ideals and sacred objectives established in human hearts shine forever. To live up to an ideal, one must be prepared to face many ordeals, difficulties, calumnies, and tribulations. Yet eons may come and go, continents may appear and disappear, people may pass away, but ideals and values remain a perennial source of inspiration to the world. And this brings me again to a quote which says, you know, I may forget what you told me, but I will never forget how you made me feel. And this is, this again talks about the role of the educator. Children might forget what we have told them, but they will never forget how we have made them feel. But this is not just when we talk about education, if we think about our own relationships in life. So our focus must be on that harmony and what we are, like this ripple effect, in what way are each one of us contributing to our communities, to our society, to our close surroundings. And in our next sessions, we will be, like we can see on the other next slide, we have this beautiful image of a bouquet of flowers. It contains 5 flowers. So when we dive deep within ourselves, when we ask ourselves this question, when we embark on this adventure of discovering who we truly are, then, you know, connecting from outside, we go deep within, because this is where the source of wisdom lies, deep within, that inherent seed of wisdom within each one of us. Only when we dive deep within that, when we realize who we truly are, when we tune ourselves as instruments, then our actions, our words, our feelings, our thoughts will reflect, as we can see, they will reflect love. They will also reflect truth. They will also reflect righteousness or right action, right conduct. They will also reflect peace and, of course, non-violence. And we will be very happy to dive deep within each one of these universal values in our next sessions. On my behalf and George as well, I would just like to thank you all once again for being on the other end. You see, this energy of love connects us even virtually. It's a heart-to-heart connection. Education is not head-to-head, it's heart-to-heart. So thank you for helping us feel and nourishing this heart-to-heart relationship too. And I don't know if you would like to say something, George, or if we can just ask Suzanne to go ahead with the next part of our session today. Thank you very much from heart to heart once again. Thank you.
I'd like to really, truly thank dear Raksha and George for this wonderful presentation, so inspiring and heartwarming. It is truly just heart to heart, as Raksha just said, and it is so true that human values are eternal and perennial and can only leave with this sense of upliftment and inspiration. So thank you so much. And now we will dedicate some time to questions and answers, as you know. Esther Puentes will be co-facilitating this session, and I wanted to ask Esther if she had already received some questions, or invite you to use the hand raise option for those of you who would like to address the speakers, or send a question through the chat box.